The majority of Australians never saw Sir Donald Bradman play. Their memories are from black and white film taken more than half a century ago. But even after all this time, he's held in such unique regard that Sunday, the 25th of February 2001, will go down as the day we lost a national treasure.
The Bradman family home in the Adelaide suburb of Kensington. Sir Donald lived here for over 60 years. It was where he passed away yesterday. Weakened by a recent bout of pneumonia, Sir Donald died in his sleep. Just over a week ago, Prime Minister Howard visited the 92-year-old, and today he led the tributes to a man so many regard as the greatest Australian of the 20th century.
He had a great impact on Australian life, especially during the desperate years of the Depression, when his prowess on the cricket field lifted the hopes and the spirits of a people who at times felt they had little else.
Opposition leader Kim Beazley said Sir Donald's death will leave a void in the spirit of many Australians.
For many Australians today, the passing of Sir Don Bradman will be like a death in the family.
I feel today, amidst all these lights and cameras and so on, somewhat like a movie star. Of course, at a very different salary.
Those who knew and played alongside Bradman in the 30s and 40s had a special insight into the man. 88-year-old Bill Brown said Bradman survived a career in international cricket without a blemish to his character.
He was a very fine gentleman, and we as team players found him extremely good. He was an outstanding captain, and he was a great fellow.
He's a great captain and a great leader. He always led from the front.
Sam Loxton also played with Bradman as one of the legendary Invincibles. Today the tears flowed as he remembered not the national hero, but Bradman, the mate.
Not going to see another one. Not like this fella. No, he was just something else.
And he continued to be something else to generations of cricketers who never came close to the Don's record.
There was one person who sticks out in the game of cricket, twice as good as anyone else, and that was Sir Donald Bradman, and yet not for a minute did he think that he was anything special.
Donald Bradman was just 12 when he came to the SCG and vowed to his father he would one day play here. 6 years later he was back, making his first-class debut. The ground went on to be his favourite. He once scored a world record 452 runs here, and on this turf, 100th century. And in the decades that followed, Sir Donald's humility, his wish to avoid the spotlight, only endeared him to new generations.
He was a boy born at Cootamundra, lived at Bowral, became captain of Australia, having dominated the cricket scene for a number of years, and it just showed that you can do that sort of thing in Australia.
As was his wish, Sir Donald will be given a private funeral in Adelaide. Plans, though, are underway for a state memorial service, a chance for a public farewell to one of cricket's last gentlemen.
I think people are very proud of him being an Australian, and I think they'll remember him very kindly.
Mark Burrows, National 9 News.
So there you are, an extraordinary man and a giant among cricketers. Question is, Ken, will anyone even match his achievements?
Hendo, most unlikely. Sir Donald has come closer than anyone else to being the perfect batsman, able to demolish an attack with ruthless precision. His Test career began in 1928, and although interrupted by the Second World War, it spanned 2 decades, during which he played 52 Tests, scoring 6,996 runs. His highest Test knock, a long-standing record of 334. His average, an incredible 99.94.
In an era when hero worship can be as fickle as a passing fad, like no other, the legend of Sir Donald Bradman endured through generations.
He played 52 Test matches, ended up with a total of 6,996 runs.
Born in Cootamundra, Bradman's family moved to Bowral when he was 2. Returning home years later, against the house tank, he demonstrated with a cricket stump and golf ball how, as a child, he had developed remarkable eye-hand coordination. His love of fielding was honed against a battered paling fence.
Cricket is a glorious game and is made the more interesting and sporting because of its uncertainty.
Between 1927 and 1948, Bradman amassed 117 first-class centuries, which included 29 in tests. In the process, he entertained like no other before or since. Bradman was never coached and could never really define his freakish gift for scoring runs.
Many players who I thought had more ability than I had. And why they didn't make more runs than I did, I do not know.
A small man, his timing was impeccable. His appetite for runs ferocious. Against England in 1930, he made a century in each session before getting out next day for 334. Yet, he claimed it wasn't his best knock.
I played a better innings than that when I played at Lord's in 1930. I made 254 at Lord's, and every ball went exactly where I wanted it to go until the ball got out.
During the Great Depression of the 30s, Bradman was the country's tonic.
Don Bradman, now I ask you, is he any good?
At his peak, Bradman received 600 letters a day on tour and until recently spent 4 hours a day answering fan mail. Although accomplished in dealing with the public, he was a very private man. His critics would say cold and aloof. Years later, his son changed his name by deed poll to escape the Bradman spotlight. Determined to combat his greatness, England introduced the infamous tactic of bodyline on the tour of Australia in 1932-33.
World's greatest batsman deals with this Larwood menace.
It was felt Bradman was suspect to the short pitch bowling of Harold Larwood. The ploy proved effective. The great man's batting average reduced to a mortal 56.57 for the series, but in the process produced ugly incidents on and off the field. The bitterness generated still remains.
There was no fraternisation between the teams at all.
Because of bodyline, because of the bad blood?
There was a 6-year gap because of the war, but in 1948, at 40 years of age, Bradman led a team to England that remained undefeated and became known as the Invincibles. On that tour, Bradman played his last test. Not knowing it, but needing just 4 runs for a batting average of 100, he was out, second ball for a duck.
Second bowler, Googly, got him. Well, it isn't often you get a big hand when you make a duck, but this was different.
The game was greater than its champion.
Some people said I got out because I had tears in my eyes. Of course, that's rubbish.
And so, with a batting average of 99.94, which still makes him twice as good as any other player in the history of the game, Bradman retired.
And I'm quite sure I shall have no regrets at all.
A successful career followed in business and cricket administration. He became our first and only cricketing knight, and as a lasting legacy, a museum in his name at Bowral. Bradman was always reluctant to make comparisons between players of his era and today's, but on his 90th birthday, he met modern-day favourites, Shane Warne, and the batsman who most reminded him of himself, India's Sachin Tendulkar. Beyond that, and through it all, the love of his life since he was 12, Lady Jessie Bradman, a partnership he always said had no equal.
Could you have done all this without Jessie?
No, no one in the world. No one in the world. She's the most marvellous woman of ever existed.
While Sir Donald's death is being greeted with sadness throughout the cricket-playing world, the greatest impact outside Australia is likely to be in India, even though he never toured there. Today's news also stunned the Australian and Indian teams, who begin their Test series tomorrow.
Both the Australian and Indian teams are staying in the same hotel in Mumbai, most of the tourists getting the bad news from home well after midnight.
My wife rang me at 2:15 this morning and got a steady stream of calls after that.
Steve Waugh was the last Australian captain to meet the game's greatest player.
His mind was very, very alert and very sharp even 12 months ago, and had, certainly had his views on cricket and the way the game was going, and he was pleased with the way the game was going, but, it was a privilege for me to meet him one-on-one.
Shane Warne was one of only 2 current cricketers invited to Bradman's 90th birthday 2 years ago.
Got here to meet him and ask questions, and it was just a great couple of hours and something I'll treasure forever.
Sachin Tendulkar was the other, India's superstar, the batsman who most reminded Bradman of himself as a player.
I think, yeah, I would consider myself as one of the luckiest guys on this earth, and it'll always be a special moment for me.
Throughout cricket-mad India, fans are in mourning.
I, for myself, I've been at Bradman's home at Holden Street in Adelaide, and I know what it's like. It was heaven when I went there.
He was a great grandfather of the cricket. We miss him now.
At this stage, there's no plans to alter or shorten the Australians-Indian tour. The first test will go ahead here in Mumbai tomorrow morning as scheduled.
I'm sure Sir Donald Bradman would want the game to go on, and that's the most important thing here, is to play the cricket.
In Mumbai, India, Andrew McKinlay, National 9 News.